Yeah, I'm sailing around the world on a 27-foot sailboat.
Are you like a lifelong sailor? I get the feeling you
No,
really
no,
know. Like, no?
no. I just started.
What? You bought a 27-foot sailboat and then you told your friends and family, I'm leaving Seattle, I'm sailing around the world by myself. How did people react to that?
Oh, my poor mother. When I bought the boat, I told everyone, like, hey, I'm quitting my job. I'm gonna sail around the world. And everyone was like, haha, lol, you don't know how to sail. And I said, yeah, I Googled it. It'll be okay.
You have a couple million followers. When were you like, holy shit, there's a lot of people interested in this adventure?
There was never any goal to do social media. And then I went from 300 followers to 100,000 in 5 days.
This is Creator, the podcast from Matador Network. I'm your host, Ross Borden, and I believe creators are the future of all global advertising. So join me as I sit down with top creators to hear about how they got started, the challenges they've overcome, and the tips you need to become a full-time creator.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Creator, the podcast. Today we have Luke Hartley, aka Sailing Songbird, on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Luke is sailing around the world. I've been following his adventures. Absolutely insane. A lot of these videos going crazy viral. From, I think, the mainland of the US all the way to South Pacific. I know you stopped in Tonga. Now you just arrived in New Zealand. Luke, how the hell are you? Tell us where you are and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Ross. Yeah, my real name's Luke, but on the internet I go by Sailing Songbird. And yeah, I'm sailing around the world on a 27-foot sailboat.
So when did you start? When did you like leave port for the beginning of the journey?
Yeah, so I left the dock in Seattle, like my home dock that I did a big refit of Songbird right after I bought her. Did a big refit and then left the dock on October 7th of 2023, a date that is forever seared in my memory.
And are you like a lifelong sailor? I get the feeling you really
No.
know. Like, no?
No. I just started sailing. Like I
What?
had never been on a boat before. Do you want the whole story?
Yeah, I want the whole story.
We've got time. Yeah, we've got time.
We got time, dude. Let's get the whole story.
The story is I was a middle school music teacher teaching in Seattle,
Right.
and my classroom didn't have any windows in it, and that was hard for me. I was getting to school in the dark and leaving in the dark, and was generally not very happy. I had this dream of being a music teacher, and when I finally got there and achieved the dream, I got my first contract, got my first classroom, my own students, like I did the dream, and then I had this like existential crisis that like I had a job that it'd be like respectable to retire from, and that like freaked me out. I was like, am I just going to be in this windowless room for like 40 years and then I retire and die? Like, obviously there's like plenty more that happens, but like this was the thought that I was having as like a 23-year-old,
Right.
or I guess a 24-year-old. And so I was kind of scrolling aimlessly on YouTube one day and came across this video of a sailboat that had been sailing around the world for 10 years. And I watched it like cover to cover. I watched it like front to back, and I was fascinated. I was immediately fascinated. I had never, like I said, I'd never really been on a boat before, never been sailing. But the self-sufficiency that I saw in this sailor as he explained his systems and the life he was explaining, I just got super obsessed with it and went down like a rabbit hole of YouTube.
You learned sailing through YouTube? 'Cause it's crazy because
I straight up Googled how to sail. I remember Googling how to sail.
I was watching some of your videos with my wife the other day, and I was like, this guy clearly like grew up on boats, sailing from the time he could walk. Like I was sure that your parents sailed. I like made up this whole story in my mind that like you've been sailing all your life, and you're telling me you learned to sail by watching YouTube videos, and until you decide to quit your teaching job, you had never been on a sailboat in a real like sailing capacity.
Well, so like, I don't know. We did like a big vacation when I was like 12 and we went to Hawaii and we did like a catamaran excursion one day and like that's
okay,
it.
right. But that's
And
not,
I just
you didn't sail
remember-
to Hawaii from
No,
California, from
no,
Seattle.
I just remember there being dolphins. But like, so that's the literally the only time I'd been on a boat. But yeah, I mean, I Googled how to sail, and then after watching so many YouTube videos, the sailors would get into like a situation, and then I would be like, oh, they should like reef the main to like a double reef. And then the next moment they're like, okay, we need to reef to like a double reef. And I'm like, oh, I'm starting to pick this up. Okay.
You're like, I know how to sail. I'm a professional sailor just from watching videos. That's incredible.
Well, yeah, and then I was substituting, like in real life, like in Seattle. I was
Right.
working as a sub, and I decided, like, the pull and the call to the sea was so strong that I flew down to Mexico for 2 months, and hitchhiked around Mexico on sailboats, which is really easy to do. And so over
Wait,
the
walk
course
me
of the-
through that. So did you fly to Mexico or you hitchhiked to Mexico on a sailboat?
So I flew to La Paz.
Okay.
No, I flew to Puerto Vallarta. No, where was? Yeah, I flew to Puerto Vallarta. And there was a boat that I had met on Facebook that was like picking up crew. And the captain agreed to have me aboard. It was just me and the captain. Like, this isn't like a big expedition boat. It's just me and another cruiser. And I sailed with him for like a week or two. And then I was kind of ready to move on to a different boat to see what other boats were like. So I hopped on the paddleboard and introduced myself to all the other boats in the anchorage. And yeah, after sailing on 5 different boats, I got back to Seattle and I was like, time to buy a boat. And yeah, quit my job, bought a boat, and after a 7-month refit in the yard in Seattle, I did a week of day sailing on my own boat and then launched on the circumnavigation.
So you felt the call of the sea, you bought a boat, a 27-foot sailboat, and then you told your friends and family, I'm leaving Seattle, I'm sailing around the world by myself. How did people react to that?
Oh, my poor mother. So when I bought the boat, the goal was always to sail around the world. There was never a smaller goal. It was always like, I'm buying a boat to sail around the world. And so when I bought the boat, I told everyone, like, hey, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to sail around the world. And everyone was like, haha, LOL, good luck. You don't know how to sail. And I said, yeah, I Googled it. It'll be okay. I hope that, I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I hope that like this story shows people that sailing around the world with like the modern tech that we have nowadays, it's really not that, it looks way harder than it is. It looks way harder than it is.
I think when most people, myself included, think about like sailing from here to, or, the west coast of the United States to Tonga or New Zealand, in my mind, like the storm that is so big you can't get away from it. That's what would freak me out. Yeah, something could break, but yeah, with modern technology, you could typically call for help. It might take a really long time for help to get you. But for those of us who are not sailors, tell us about how you can confidently go into the Pacific Ocean where you're 1,000 miles from any land at all and not have a risk of getting caught up at the wrong place at the wrong time.
I mean, I think to start at the beginning, the ocean's called the Pacific Ocean, which is Latin for peace. I mean, Latin is pax, but the Pacific was named the Pacific by the first European explorers because it's a very calm ocean. You don't really get big storms in the middle of the ocean. Like, we think of storms because we live on land, and land disrupts the ocean's kind of balance. You get a lot of onshore, offshore wind when land comes up because of the temperature differential between ocean and land. When you're in the middle of the ocean, 1,000 miles from shore, literally, that's the safest place for a boat to be because you're 1,000 miles
That's
from
really
rocks,
interesting.
which are dangerous. Rocks
Right.
are very dangerous. And when you're in the tropical latitudes, the weather's so stable. It's so stable. You don't get big freak storms. I mean, I suppose you get like freak storms, but like you also get there could be a tornado that rolls through Atlanta tomorrow. I mean, it's safer weather patterns than on land, surely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the first video that like I just stopped doing, like what I stopped the scroll when I saw you and discovered you and started following, was you on your paddleboard, and you were like, yeah, I'm out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, more than 1,000 miles from any landmass. And
Yeah.
oh, I'm on my paddleboard and you're all, I lost my sailboat. I was like, oh, just kidding. It's right back there, but it's like really far behind you. And in my mind,
Yeah.
again, probably ignorant thing to think, given what you just said, but I was like, what if the wind does come up, or there's a current all of a sudden and you lose your sailboat? Then you're literally standing on a paddleboard and can't catch up to your boat, and you're in the middle of the ocean by yourself, which I think is like the most terrifying reality that you could ever come upon. But what you're saying is like, when it's calm like that, it's just calm and you can just confidently paddleboard around and there's no danger of you losing your boat at all.
That video, I get a lot of questions about that video because that's my most viewed video on social media. It's done 70 million views across platforms.
Yeah, I believe it.
So I had been adrift for 10 days. I hadn't had a breath of wind in 10 days. Anytime the wind dies on the ocean, I go paddleboarding. It's like one of my favorite things to do. I always paddleboard in front of my boat, so that if wind came up, which it doesn't, and also like you can see wind on the water, the texture of the water changes. So
sure.
If a big gust of wind was going to come through, I'd see it like a mile away.
Yeah.
And then able
start
to take
motoring
action.
back. Get back. Right
Additionally,
back to the boat.
if wind hits the boat, sailboats have keels, and because of that, they can only move forward. They can't move backwards. They can't move sideways. Like, they can only move forward. So if a big gust of wind came up, the boat would just glide up to me and I'd hop on. If there's currents on the ocean are miles wide. I'd just drift with the boat. Like, people think that was the craziest, most dangerous stunt, and it cracks me up because it was a lake out there.
I mean, I figured you knew what you're doing because you were very calm out there. You're just like chilling.
Yeah.
And it really, like, it blew my mind because it did look like you were in a like calm, placid lake with, like you said, not a breath of wind. And in fact, you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So
that zone of ocean that I was in is called the doldrums. And for any listener that doesn't understand, doesn't know, hasn't heard that word before, around the equator, there's a belt of windless ocean. And that's just because of macro ocean and wind patterns. And so there's like on average, like a 60 to 100 mile zone where there's just no wind along the equator. And when I was crossing the Pacific, I had to cross the equator, and I didn't have an engine. I had no engine, and I launched with the knowledge of not having an engine. And I drifted around the doldrums for 2 weeks. It took me 2 weeks to get like 100 miles. And
wait, so for the whole trip, you've had no
engine?
engine? You've had no engine in your sailboat for the whole trip?
I had an engine from Seattle to Mexico, and then when I got to Mexico, my engine broke. And then I rebuilt the engine, and then it broke in a new way, which was much worse. And I went, screw it. I don't have the time, energy, or frankly, funds to like fix this engine. And hurricane season was coming into Mexico. And it broke like a week before, hurricane season was going to start And so I was like, well, I guess I do the Pacific Ocean without an engine. That's the way that this is gonna go. And so launched without an engine, and I did Mexico to New Zealand all without power.
That is unbelievable. So okay, we covered the sailing part, at least for now. So I understand where you're coming from on this adventure from a sailing perspective. When did you start the platform? You have a couple million followers across TikTok and Instagram. Mm-hmm. When were you like, holy shit, there's a lot of people interested in this adventure? Tell me about your sort of journey as a creator.
I'd be happy to. It's kind of an interesting journey. There was never any goal to do social media. My plan was to live on as few dollars as possible, and like I'd spearfish for most of my meals, and like to just kind of live off of being given rice by, because when I anchor in these big, like very popular anchorages, I'm anchoring next to like $1 million boats, and like it's very common in the culture to go and say hi and go and share a meal, and then they realize, like, boats realize I have so little, and then they send me home with kilos of rice and kilos, like cans of food. Like I get given so much food all the time by boats that are really well stocked.
Awesome.
And so I was planning on just kind of going from place to place and picking up like hard manual work in yards, in boat yards and such. But then when I think I was on month 4 of Mexico, I posted a video on social media, on Instagram, and I had like 300 followers on Instagram, just friends from college and such, just like it was a normal account. And then I went from 300 followers to 100,000 in 5 days.
Wow. Was that from one video that went viral, or was it just
it was like my first real video that I tried. I was like, so the longer story is I went to a van festival in Mexico where a bunch of Americans and Canadians drive down from the US and like rave in the desert for a week. Okay. And I had made all these friends, like all these young people, because typically sailors are in their mid 120s. And so I was hanging out with all these young people, which was awesome. And I realized like on day 2 or 3, all my friends were like taking videos of like everything. I'm like, why are you guys like taking so many photos and videos? And I realized like they're all influencers. Like they're all like van life influencers. And then they like kind of taught me the tricks of the trade. And they were like, yeah, if you tried, you'd do well. And so I was like, okay, I'll try. And so, yeah, then made it.
And you did well. 5 days later,
yeah, 5 days later,
followers.
I'm like surpassing my friends. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to go this hard. Like, whoops.
What was the video that got your start? Were you basically announcing, you're like, my engine is gone and I'm saying, fuck it, I'm going to go anyway. I'm sailing to New Zealand by myself.
Yeah, I still had an engine at that point, but it was just me being like, hey, my name's Luke, and last year I was a middle school music teacher, and I decided to quit my job and sold what little I had and bought this little boat, and in 2 months I'm going to cross the Pacific, and I hope you guys enjoy following along in my adventures. I'm saying this to like 300 people on my Instagram, but then, yeah, I mean, I think that video now is, I don't know, something like 30 million views across platforms or something. I'm not quite sure on that video, but yeah. And so then it was like, oh, I guess I'm an influencer now. Like it was just like straight away. I guess this is what I do. Because within 3 weeks, I mean, that single video brought me to 200,000. And then after I crossed the Pacific, I mean, yeah. And then that paddleboarding video, I gained another like 300,000 followers from that one video.
Maybe a question you get a lot too. Do you use Starlink, or how do you have service in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah, so I use Starlink. I picked up a Starlink unit in Mexico, then like right at the end of my time in Mexico. But on my Pacific Passage, my Starlink dish fell overboard on day 19, and so then I didn't have any internet or any way to communicate with the outside world because my sat phone stopped working. So from day 19 to day 49, I was totally I had no communications, no comms, and frankly had a wonderful time. It was great to just kind of check out of planet Earth from for a month. I eventually saw a boat. I saw this little light in the distance on day 45 of my Pacific Passage, and I called them over the radio and I said, like, hello, is there anyone out there? And this Kiwi 90-foot sailing vessel responded, and I gave them my sister's number and asked that they give her a call to let her know that I was alive.
Yeah, that you're okay. Oh my God, yeah. That's crazy.
And then 4 days later, I was able to get an internet connection on shore. And gave my sister's always the first person I call. I want to because if there's ever any bad news, like if someone's died or there's a new war, like I'd want to hear from my sister. Cause yeah, I mean, yeah, I've received hard news, like when I've been in really remote spots. Like I learned of my grandmother's passing through sat phone right before my sat phone went out. And then you're kind of just sitting in the middle of the ocean thinking about your family and about what's important to you and about what life's all about, and you're on a little boat. So it's a crazy.
It's got to be a
perspective.
really unique experience, like being, I mean, who can say that they've been completely cut off for a full month? Almost no one.
Yeah. When's the last time you didn't touch the internet for a month?
Yeah, I mean that's a really unique human experience. It brought you probably back to something almost no one's experienced in a very long time. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful experience, honestly. I did a lot of writing, I was super creative and feeling a lot of inspiration.
Has the community and like people leaving you comments and asking you questions, has that been like a cool sense of like, belonging when you're on this solo adventure across the ocean? What is that like?
Yeah, so I mean, so I have a degree in education, like I'm an educator at heart. And the hardest thing about leaving my teaching position in Seattle is that when you're a teacher and you're like grinding hard every day, like for your students and like going to school every day, like it's hard work. It's really hard work, especially at the school I was at. You have this sense that you're doing really honorable work. Like it's hard work, but it's honorable work. And leaving to go sailing, I struggled with it because it felt like a very selfish thing to do. Like, yeah, it's just so it felt like a selfish thing to do, but I knew I needed to do it. I knew I needed to do it. And so the social media has been a blessing for me, first and foremost because I feel like I'm helping people. Like what was this kind of relatively selfish thing to do, like peace out from the world and like go and sail and go and hang out in the middle of the ocean. All of a sudden, like I have this big classroom with a couple million folks on it. And I get some really beautiful messages from people that describe the impact that my videos made on them. I think of this one message that I got every week. Like I think about it all the time. It's a woman that is in Scotland, and she messaged me saying, she messaged me saying my husband died last week, and I've been stricken with grief and haven't been able to get out of bed. And I have 3 young boys in the house, and I haven't really been able to be there for them because I've been just struggling with grief so much, and I haven't been able to get out of bed. And so not only did my boys lose their father, they're kind of missing a mother right now too. And I was doom scrolling in bed and then came across your video, like a video of yours, and then watched every single video you've ever made. And the zeal for life that you have, the way that your perspective on life, the inspiration that you carry throughout your adventures, gave me, she said, like, it gave me the strength to get up. And she was like, I just went to the grocery store and bought ingredients for a meal, and I want you to know that my boys are having a home cooked meal from their mother because of you tonight.
Wow, man, that's incredible.
That is more valuable to me than any follower count, getting messages like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is really inspiring. Like, I think I can see in the comments that people leave on your content. You are, you inspire people for different reasons. You do have a really positive take. Even like I found like when things go wrong, you kind of like laugh it off. When a lot of people are like would be like imploding mentally, they would be like, "Oh my God, this puts me in a dangerous situation," or "This is going to be such an inconvenience," or "How am I going to solve this problem?" So like, how is that just sort of like the mentality you have to have when you're sailing across the ocean by yourself? Or have you always had that sort of like positive spin when something bad happens?
I think I've always sort of had a little bit of a positive spin, but I kind of live by the worry once, suffer twice mentality.
Yeah.
Like what sailing has taught me, sailing and cruising will take everything you have, no matter what you have. And you get really comfortable in living in chaos and living in an environment where you have no control. And so then when things happen to me that I don't have any control over, it's like par for the course. It's what it's what I signed up for, and so, yeah, I don't really, all of the chaos, all of the chaos of sailing and the dangerous situations that I find myself, it's just kind of part of it. It's just kind of part of it. And I'm comfortable in that space.
What about, I imagine you've gotten really good at like shooting yourself. What do you use to shoot? Is it Insta360 or do you have like little tripod on your phone, or it's all on the phone?
So yeah, just my iPhone. I have an iPhone, and then I had a GoPro that I could clip onto different, I had like a claw mount that I could clip onto different parts of the boat, which was super important for me to be able to, like set up a camera and then have me changing a sail or something. Like that was super important. In Tahiti, I picked up an Insta360 camera just because it adds like a lot of production value to the YouTube to be able to walk around deck with this 360 camera. It really is the best camera that can kind of show you what's going on the boat. But I just received 2 other GoPros, so now I have 3. Now I have 3 GoPros. Like it is
nice. You got a GoPro sponsorship yet?
I have. GoPro sent me the new GoPro 13, the legit kit, and it's got all these lenses. Like I'm super impressed with the camera that they sent me. Yeah, the GoPro 13. I'm excited to figure out all the different things it can do with all the different lenses and such.
So tell us about YouTube, because you said you're focusing more on YouTube and long form content, which I hear a lot from different creators. But tell us about where you're at on YouTube, and if we go on your YouTube channel, what's the sort of difference in the content that we can expect?
Yeah, so the YouTube channel is where I put like all my obviously it's where I put all my long form content. I want the YouTube channel to be like the full story of what I'm doing. While the Instagram and TikTok are just kind of windows into the grander journey. It's been difficult because I find that I have a real affinity for editing and creating Instagram reels, and less of an affinity for those long form videos. Partly it's because for me to edit a reel, it takes me like an hour, and to put out a half-hour YouTube video takes like 40 hours. I mean, it's a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And I'm busy trying not to sink, and like I'm busy like sailing and like just doing it, and so I don't really have enough time to like sit down and edit for YouTube, which has been my struggle.
I saw at some point you said there was a video where you're like, hey, I really haven't posted in a long time, and I have all this footage, but I've had like kind of like an editor's block, and I just haven't been able to motivate myself to edit. I imagine that's something that a lot of creators experience, even if they're not sailing a sailboat across the ocean. But like, why do you feel like that happened to you? Why did you have that block, and then how'd you get out of it?
Yeah, I didn't post a single video for like 2 months while I was sailing through the South Pacific, but I was continuing to film everything. But then for some reason, just the action of sitting down and like hopping on CapCut and like pasting all that footage together, like I had some really hard edits of me scuba diving that like it took me hours, and I just had this mental block on sitting down and doing that. I'm not sure that I've gleaned much wisdom from that experience to pass on, other than I was shocked. I made the post about struggling, because I was really struggling with my mental health. It's been an incredibly lonely year for me. I struggle with loneliness a huge amount. People are like, oh, you're a solo sailor sailing across the ocean. How, like, do you get lonely? I'm like, yes, desperately lonely. Like it's the worst part about it. But I was struggling with my mental health and struggling with it all. And I was like, what if I just like, I was kind of, it wasn't calculated. I just took my phone out and started talking. And then I had about 3 minutes of a little spiel. And that's like the limit for reels. So I uploaded it, and it like blew up. Like this video about me talking about my mental health. Like I think it got like 3,000 comments or something like that, which is a huge amount of comments.
Yeah.
And that kind of solidarity to hear from so many people about their own struggles then motivated me. It made me feel like people cared again, after I'd been away for so long.
And then you got back
really
into
meaningful.
it. Then that gave you the push to like start editing all that footage and start posting again.
Yeah. Just like speaking, I mean, I think the reason why my social media has been successful is just because I talk to the camera very frankly. I talk very, I don't really strategize around what content's going to do best. I just
you're just living. You're just out there sailing.
Yeah, I'm busy
it
sailing
really
around
is.
the world.
It's some of the most real content, most raw content. I saw you catch a fish. I was watching that with my son because he's obsessed with fishing. I could see you catch like a tuna, and then I found another one of you catching. You had 2 huge mahi on, and you had one mahi in the boat, and you're like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? The hook already came out. The mahi's in the boat, and you're like, I'm going to let this guy go, and I'm going to eat the other one. And you bring up the other one, and it pops off the line, and now you went from 2 mahi to no mahi. And I was like,
it was devastating.
Oh my God. And as usual, you're like, you kind of like laughed it off like, oh, I couldn't have eaten them anyway. They were too big. But like, it is really
that one hurt.
Some of the most, I mean, that had to hurt. Those are so delicious.
I needed the protein as well at that point in passage.
How do you stock up? I saw you talking about like eating ramen. Like, what is your staple if you don't catch fish? What are you eating every day?
I eat a lot of pasta. The problem with pasta is that it's really water intensive, and water is the most valuable resource I have on Songbird.
Right.
Water is only used for drinking. I do all my dishes, all my hygiene in salt, like in the salt.
Right.
And so, yeah, water's super precious to me. And so when I make pasta water, I mean, you know, they say like, make it salty as the sea. That's too salty. Don't use salt water to just make pasta. It's too much salt. I do half and half. I'll do half seawater, half salt, half fresh water. And so, yeah, I eat a lot of pasta. When eggs are cheap, I eat a lot of eggs. Like here in New Zealand, they're cheap. In Mexico, they were incredibly cheap. In the South Pacific, they're dummy expensive. Like each egg can be like $1.50, instead of
crazy
like 60 cents.
You had something
cents.
About you covered 200 eggs in Vaseline. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean I could buy a pallet of 18 eggs for, I think it was 36 pesos. So it was like $2 or $3 for 18 eggs. And so I got 200 of them, and I covered them in Vaseline to assist in the seal of the shell, because eggs go bad when the yolk, over time, the yolk drops in gravity. Like the gravity pulls the yolk down, and then when the yolk touches the shell, it then lets oxygen in, and then it goes rotten. And so something the sailors do is
I did not know
either, yeah, so you can either cover your eggs in Vaseline or you can flip them every couple days. And so when you flip the egg, then the yolk starts descending again, and then you flip
coming the other way.
Yeah, and so you keep the yolk in the center, and then the eggs can last a very long time, especially if they've never been refrigerated. I have no idea why we refrigerate eggs in the U.S. It is bad practice, doesn't really do anything except make us feel like they're safer. None of the rest of the world refrigerates. But it's the gravity. The gravity is the danger to eggs. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I did not know that.
Refrigerates their eggs.
Yeah. So yeah, I refrigerate my eggs. Apparently, doing
yeah. Well, as soon as you refrigerate your eggs, they have to be refrigerated forever. So in the U.S., don't stop refrigerating your eggs because they get refrigerated on site. This didn't mean, I didn't mean to turn this into an egg podcast, but
forget sailing and being a creator. We're talking about eggs.
Eggs. Here we go. What the people really need to know about.
So back to the overall journey and like where you're headed. One, I'm curious, like, you know, you are sailing across the ocean in a tiny sailboat, not necessarily the most ripe for like brand partnerships, I gotta say. So have any brands that you said GoPro sent you some of their new cameras? Have any brands reached out, or have you done any brand partnerships with any major brands? Because you have, 2 million followers, a lot of followers, and people are clearly very engaged in your content.
Yeah, it's been much harder to monetize than I was anticipating. Yeah, it's been much harder to monetize than I was anticipating. I've done 2 brand deals so far, which kind of funded this whole season for me. I did a deal with the Nature Conservancy, which is a environmental nonprofit, which
Yep.
they wanted me to come out as pro ocean. I was happy to do that. Um, and the other one was for an AI music app called Suno, which I thought fit really well within kind of me and what I do because I was a music teacher. And I genuinely think that app is really, really cool. I got a bunch of hate for that sponsorship just because people don't like AI.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
saying that
AI,
like,
very
oh,
polarizing.
like if I'm using AI, I'm depriving a small artist from creating music. But then I was like, hey, like I'm a small artist, and now I can generate my own high quality music for my own content for free, like
Yeah,
easily.
that's a stretch that AI is depriving a small artist.
I
I
mean,
would
I mean,
disagree with that.
I'm not like ragging on them too hard. I mean, they have a point in that like small composers, like yeah, like composers and song creators and beat writers, like they are their industry is now. I mean, it can be done by AI, and that really sucks
Yeah.
for them. But then there's other creators like me that now have, I can generate my own. I mean, I don't have any budget for what I do. And so now I can generate high quality music for my content. And who's to say, like, I'm more or less important than them or they're more or less important as me as a creator? It's just like one of those things of like, it's a new tool that will put some people out of work and will benefit others.
Well, I think you're going to get more brand partnerships going forward because I really think the content's incredible. So tell us about your plans from here. You're in New Zealand. How long are you going to be in New Zealand? And then where does the adventure take you next?
Yeah, so kind of the way that the ocean works, the route for circumnavigation is pretty predetermined. I mean, you can go and do your own thing, but like with the way that the macro wind, weather, and current patterns go, it's a pretty clear route for the circumnavigation. So I'm in no way innovating on the way I am circumnavigating. I am following the doctrine of like the way to do it. At least for my first circumnavigation. I'll do crazier stuff later on. I'm just 20. I'm only 26, so I got plenty of time. And so yeah, I'm here for all cyclone season. Cyclone season ends on May 1st, and May 1st, other than a heating micro weather patterns, I'll be setting sail for Fiji. And then the next season is Fiji, Vanuatu, and the Solomons going westward. And I'll probably spend like, yeah, 6 months over the course of those three nations. And then I have a big choice. I can go through Indonesia, or sail north to Micronesia and then hit the Philippines, maybe go even farther north to Japan. And then I
Wow.
would sail down through Southeast Asia, down around Singapore, up to Thailand, and then launch from Phuket across the Indian Ocean, stopping in the Maldives for 3 months and Chagos Archipelago for 1 month. That's like the visa maxes that I can get on those nations. And then I'll hit Madagascar, cruise Madagascar for a season. Can't wait for Madagascar. Round the Cape of Good Hope, around South Africa, after kind of seeing South Africa for a bit. I really want to see Namibia and the skeleton coast of Namibia, so I'll hit Namibia after South Africa. And then I'll cross the South Atlantic to Brazil, and then sail north to the Caribbean, and then hit Panama. And then after Panama, that's like the kind of 5-year plan. After Panama, I could either run it back and like do it again, or do something crazier like circumnavigate the Americas and like go around Cape Horn and then up through the Northwest Passage. But I'm not saying I'm going to do that because that's like a crazy undertaking. Much easier.
That's
to sail
more
around
more
the
dangerous
world.
water. More
Yeah, there's like a lot of icebergs.
yeah.
Sailing over like from Greenland to Alaska over top of Canada.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like that's Arctic Circle sailing. This boat was built in Canada, and so the hull is insulated, and I have an big alcohol heater on board. And so this boat is built for northern latitudes. And so I could do some pretty crazy Arctic sailing in Songbird. If I did that and it got really cold in Songbird, I would end up killing the termites that are slowly kind of eating away at Songbird that I picked up in Tonga. So I'm kind of tempted to just go get into the cold
Just freeze them out.
to neutralize that threat. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's like the 5 to 7 year plan.
That's a very solid 5 to 7 year plan. So no
Yeah.
no shortage of content on the horizon for
No.
you. And
No.
so Luke, one question before we go that I ask everyone, and you know this might get harder and harder as you go to all those incredible places over the next couple of years. If you had to constrain your life to 3 countries, your passport only worked in 3 countries, you had to stay in those 3 countries for the rest of your life, including the US, yes, that is included if it's one of your 3, what would the 3 countries be?
I mean, it's interesting because since I've left sailing, I've sailed to the U.S., Mexico, French Polynesia, Tonga, and now New Zealand. So I only have 5 to choose from. French Polynesia, by far and large, that is number 1, no question.
Okay.
And
what was your
then
favorite place in French Polynesia that you went to?
The Marquesas. The Marquesas.
Marquesas,
It's an
okay.
incredibly remote archipelago in northeastern French Polynesia, and it is very, very untouched. I mean, flights there are very expensive, so there's very few tourists, and there's people that are still living in kind of traditional Polynesian ways.
Okay, so French Polynesia, an easy
French
number
Polynesia,
1.
number 1, no question. I love Mexico. Much of Mexico is, especially around the coasts, are kind of becoming America's playground, which is a shame. But I love that country. I mean, Mexico's gorgeous. I've spent
Same
8
here.
months of my life, 8 months of my life sailing around Mexico. And then I suppose I would say Tonga after that. Tonga was lovely. Super nice people, beautiful water, good stock for spearfishing. I like the remote. I really like the remote spots.
Were you in Tonga during the whale season by chance?
Yeah, I got smashed in my face with my boom and almost died because I lost my concentration because I had a bunch of whales all around the boat. So I was looking at all these whales, and then I got knocked out by my boom.
I've been on a couple trips there where you get to jump in and swim with just a dive mask with the humpback whales and the calves. Just unreal experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they were
Tonga's
beautiful.
incredible.
They were beautiful. I see humpback whales all the time, though. There were lots of humpback whales in Mexico. Lots of humpback whales in Tonga. I see whales are like squirrels.
Yeah, really. There's so
My
many.
coolest kind of ocean story is the fact that on my 49-day passage from Mexico to the Marquesas, during the last month of the passage, I had 20 to 40 mahi-mahi under my boat 24/7. Like 20 in the day and 40 at night. And I was spearfishing them off the boat the whole way. So I survived on mahi for that whole passage. Like
You were standing on the boat and spearfishing, or jumping in and using a spear
when I
gun?
was in the doldrums and the boat wasn't moving at all, I would jump overboard and spearfish them in the water and be in their environment. And then when the wind came back after those 2 weeks adrift, I realized I could just sit on my rail with my spear gun half in the water, and there'd be like 30 of them swimming next to the boat, and I could choose one that was the right size.
The right size.
And,
Crazy.
I was going through a full mahi every 2 days, and I'd run out of mahi, and I'd be like, let me go get another one, and 15 minutes later I'd have
It's mahi o'clock.
Yeah,
Damn,
it's
that's
exactly. It
incredible.
was great. And then for those who are just listening, won't be able to see, but for those who are watching, I got a tattoo of a mahi-mahi after I got to French Polynesia to kind of signify the
sick,
fact
with
that
the
I lived on
Polynesian
these,
design.
with the
that's
Marquesian
awesome.
design, specifically Marquesian.
Okay.
Yeah, and so after living on this fish and surviving with this fish for 30 days, and I mean, I didn't have internet. All I had to do, the only people I had to talk to were those fish.
Yeah.
And so I feel very connected to the mahi now.
All right. So, and for those, in case anyone missed it, where can we find you if we want to watch all your long form content on YouTube, your reels on Instagram, and your TikToks?
Yeah, so Sailing Songbird is my name on everything. I have a website as well that you can check out, sailingsongbird.com. I sell merch, so if you want to pick up Sailing Songbird hoodie, you can go and do that on my website. But yeah, just Sailing Songbird on Instagram and TikTok and on YouTube. I intentionally kept it very simple, very findable.
Luke, love chatting with you, man. It's been
Ross.
really fun conversation, and wish you all the best. We'll be following along on the adventures, and thanks for coming on the pod.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here.
Creator, the podcast, is produced by Matador Network. We are a leading global travel publisher focused on travel and adventure. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe. Every week, I interview a new top creator. New episodes are released every Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are found. Thanks for listening.